Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to our session tonight on Homeschooling 101. So maybe you're new to homeschooling now, maybe you've just thought about it in the last couple of days, maybe you've been thinking about it for months, maybe you have gone to a lot of the school board open houses. That is great, you're doing your research. Tonight, you're going to hear an overview of the whole system, not school board specific. So I'm going to tell you not how each program school board works, but how home education and distance education works as a whole. So thank you for joining us. Okay, so you are a veteran home educator already. Bet you didn't know that. And everybody is a home educator from the time their child is born until their child has 5 birthday candles on their cake. And there is no reason in the world why you can't keep on going. Most parents can teach up to about a grade 8 level, and even without teacher's manuals. And if you want to go beyond grade 8, your child will soar. As they get older, they get more capable. They're able to access tutors, online learning themselves. And believe me, my math ends at grade 8. And yet I had 4 kids head into STEM careers. So they are going to be capable and keep on going. So this is me. My name is Judy Arnall. I am certified in the Growing Brain and the Brain Story course. I teach brain development and child development, and I'm also an education consultant. And I have 5 kids. I just finished off the last one. Of those 5, 3 are university graduates. 1 is in university in 3rd year. 1 is a master's student, soon to graduate. And 1 just finished his grade 12 and doesn't know what he wants to be when he grows up, which is kind of cool. I have books out there. The Happy Homeschooling Handbook will pretty well capture everything I talk about tonight, but in more detail. If you miss it in this little webinar, you can catch it in print. And because I unschool my children, which means they learned most of grade 1 to grade 11 through play, I wrote a book on them and their 25 friends that went on to university and colleges. We have a Facebook group, and we think teachers are amazing. What we have problems with is the system needs improvement. A one-size-fits-all system is not great for every child. So we think that it could be improved a bit. And if it's not improved, we have to be concerned about what's best for our children and the best education for them. Now, many parents choose home education. And if you ask someone, why do you home educate? You're going to get a whole bunch of reasons depending on that person and their children. So anything from bullying to, we get a lot of families now at our library presentations who want to travel. They have little babes in arms and they know they want to travel. Maybe they're in elite sports, maybe they have medical concerns, or just because they want a better academic environment. That's why they choose home education. So it's different for everybody. And a lot of why do people unschool or want to condense home education? A lot of people think that 16 years of schooling from 3 years age of preschool to grade 12 is too much, and kids burn out probably around junior high, which is the time they should be gearing up for high school, because the high school years are what counts. That's what shows up on a transcript. That is the marks that are presented to post-secondary colleges and universities, and that's where that child's future is going to be determined. Not in grades 1 to 9, in grades 10 to 12. So here's some evidence that homeschooling works. If you haven't seen this infographic around the Alberta Homeschooling website, it compares the most expensive private school in the province to home education. And there was only a 2% difference in the academic core diploma exam marks just before COVID hit. So obviously, you don't need a lot of money. You don't need a lot of teacher college or university to produce excellence in academics in home education. And same with preschool. Kids don't need preschool. They don't need 16 years of school. What kids need is more time for themselves to percolate, to think about things, to de-stress. They need more play in their lives, and they also need more relationships. And that includes family relationships. So here are basically Alberta education choices. Pretty well every school can fit into one of these squares. So I'll just quickly go through that. This square is the big public Catholic school boards. They're governed by the Education Act, run by trustees that we elect. They have to have every child follow the Alberta programs of study. They can do classroom or print or online, and they get full funding at around $12,000 per child per year. The charter school system is governed by the Education Act, but they answer direct to the minister. Again, all these three school options have to follow the Alberta programs of study when they're teaching children, and they all can offer classroom, print, or online. Charters get full funding. Independent schools are also called private schools. They are governed by the Education Act, but run by board of directors. They too have to follow the Alberta programs of study. They too can offer classroom, print, or online, but they do it on 60 to 70% of the funding, depending on their accreditation. In this corner, we have the anomaly. This is home education. Home education is governed specifically under home ed regulations, but within that bigger picture of the Education Act. So we are actually governed under both. Parents can either follow the schedule of learning outcomes for home education or the Alberta programs of study. It's up to them. And there is only home education. Once it becomes classroom, print-based, or online through the Alberta government, it becomes shared responsibility. And funding for that is this year $1,700, with half going to the school authority and half going to the parent. So where do you start? We often get this question. Let's pretend your child's right here. There's their little brain. This is why I didn't do well in art school. And first decision you have to make is, do you want control or do you want to give the control to the school? Let's take the easy route first. Let's say you think, okay, I'm done September. I want the school to take it all. So you either have to decide if you're going to put your child in the classroom or you're going to put your child in distance education, which is pretty well anything school controlled and taught, but outside a classroom. Excuse me. Then if you decide classroom, that's good. All you do is pack a lunch for your child. If you choose distance ed, then you have to decide, do you want more accountability where your child is online on Zoom with a teacher, or do you want more independence to your child? You would put them on teacher-directed, print-based correspondence. I would warn you that your child should be pretty self-motivated, self-directed to go this route. Otherwise, you're going to be doing quite a lot of nagging to get those assignments in. This is like homework, but all the time. Okay, so let's say you want the control. You can take two routes. You can choose funded and supported by a school authority, or you can choose no funding, no supervision, go to the government directly, and you're done for the year, okay? That's a new option last year, and it depends. If you if you're been doing this for a few years, let's say you moved from Ottawa to Alberta and you know what you're doing, you know home education, you just want to be left alone, that's a good route to go, is the no funding, no supervision, if you don't care about funding. But not all of us have that ability to say no to funding. So if you want funding, you want support, it's your first year, you don't know what you're doing, you want hand-holding, you should go the funded supervised school authority route. So, okay, so let's say you're going to go that route. Next decision you have to make is, do I go with a secular school board or do I go with a faith-based school board? And the list is posted in Google Docs on the internet. Once you've decided that, then for both of those decisions, you have to pick your philosophy. Do you want your child self-taught, as in unschooling? Do you want to teach? Or do you want to farm it out to somebody else, such as a homeschooling parent co-op, a learning pod, a micro school? Maybe you want your nanny to teach, siblings to teach. In Alberta, when you take on home education, you're just taking on responsibility for your child's education. It doesn't mean you have to teach. It means you can outsource it. You can even outsource it to 1-hour classes on Outschool or anything that's not provided by the government. You have that ability. And on all three of those types, you would have to send in a 1 or 2 page home education plan. And then you would have to, my taskbar is here, sorry, either decide if you're going to follow the 22 schedule outcomes or you're going to follow the 1,400 outcomes per grade of the Alberta Programs of Study. It's your choice. You can do either. Then you submit to 2 teacher visits a year where he, she, they come out to visit your child, and that's it. And that's it for the year, pretty well. Next year, you do this all over again, make that decision, fill in the forms, and you can pick a new school authority. You're only signing up for 1 year. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so step 1. So let's say, so for the rest of this presentation, when I'm talking about distance education, that is listed in red. If I'm talking about parent-led home education, that's listed in green. So when you make this decision, if your child's with a school division has been last year, you might want to let your school know what you're doing, but you don't have to. Wherever your kids are going for the fall, they'll let your previous situation know, okay? If you don't want to talk to that school anymore, no problem. Now, you can either stay with the same school board, division, and just switch from classroom online to home education, or you may want to stay with their distance education program. It's a bit easier if you do it that way, but it's not necessary. You can choose any willing board in Alberta, which means if you live in Lethbridge, you can choose a Peace River School Authority to be your homeschooling board. There are no borders in Alberta. Students can go anywhere. So let's say you decide home education. You can go supported or unsupported. If you go unsupported, you notify the government. You don't have to worry about waiting for acceptance because it'll take them months to do that. Just notify, send in the form, you're done. Start homeschooling. You don't have to wait for permission. There's no funding, there's no visits, there's no written home ed plan, there's no support, no credits for high school, and you have to do it every year. That's done. If you go supported, you have to notify with a school board. You have to wait for acceptance. It takes about 15 school days they're allowed to let you know if you're accepted. You get funding. You'll get 2 visits, one in the spring, one in the fall. You'll have to do a written home education plan. I would suggest just get anything down on paper. You can change it whenever you want. It's working in progress. So just get something done, change it in a month. You get support and encouragement, and your child gets credits through Section 6 for high school government diploma on home education. Yes. This is what the notification form looks like for unsupported. So this is the form. You would find it on the Alberta Homeschooling website and the Alberta Education website. You fill this in, you send it to the government, you're done. This is the form. So you can see this says not supervised by a school authority. This one is for a school authority supervision. So it just says ordinary notification form. Okay. Now your education plan has to go in with this, and it has to be submitted by September 30th if you want funding and support. There are two sections of this form that trip people up. The first one is Part B, the declaration by parent guardian. You have to decide if you're going to achieve the 1,400 Alberta programs of study grades, or you're going to achieve the 22 solo grades or solo outcomes. This one is grade by grade. This one is you only have to achieve those 22 outcomes by the time your child turns 20. So it's much more flexible. I would suggest you can pick a bit of both, or you could pick the bottom one. That way it gives you a lot of flexibility. If you don't get something done, who cares, right? It's but it helps, it's on your form because it helps your facilitator know what you're doing. Are you following the Alberta curriculum, or are you going to do your own thing and follow the 22 outcomes? The other thing that trips parents up is this little statement here. Parents who provide home education programs acknowledge that there are implications when they choose to use programs different from the Alberta programs of study. So this is a key phrase here, different from APS. So students may not apply to a high school principal for high school credits. Students may not receive an Alberta high school diploma. Now, if home education students meet the outcomes of the Alberta programs of study for their courses, they will get a high school diploma, and they can apply to a principal for credits under Section 6. Okay, so just explaining that because a lot of parents do that. Many parents, what they do is they follow the schedule of learning outcomes, those 22 outcomes for grades 1 to 9. And then when their children are heading into high school, like I said, high school is what matters. Those are the grades that are going on a transcript and going to be presented to post-secondaries. And grade 12 is the most important grade. Those are the grades that you input in to apply Alberta, which is the university's pull from. So they switch. In grade 9, they switch to meeting the Alberta programs of study outcomes in grade 10. That's what my unschoolers did, although we did a self-designed program, made it much more personalized. We did meet the Alberta programs of study outcomes and got diplomas, credits, and marks. Okay, next, if you decide to go supervision, you want to choose a board. You can choose a public school division or an independent school. You want to start saving your receipts, usually from January forward. Save them because you have until next May to submit them for reimbursement for your funding. If you decide to put your child back in the system, they just go by age to grade. So let's say next summer, you're going to put your kid back into school. They're grade 3 this year. They'll just go into grade 4. System won't test them. They can test them, but they probably won't. That's my experience. And there's no funding for home education kindergarten because kindergarten is mostly learning social skills, lining up, paying attention, not bugging your little classmate in circle time. And those things can all be learned at home under just parenting. So it's not funded. Okay, so what would you pick? Would you pick your resident board or division, or would you go non-resident board or school? There's pros and cons to everything. If you pick your resident board, let's say your child has been in CBE and you decide to move to CBE for home education. It might be, I'm not guaranteeing, but it might be easier to move halfway through the year from classroom to online or online back to classroom. It might be easier to move from school to home ed or home ed back to school. No guarantees, but usually once a school division has your child's funding as of September 30th, they tend to want to keep your child for the year and will be more accommodating to that child on what you want them to do. They have to be supportive because that's in the Education Act, but they tend to be schooly. Think school. Now, this doesn't apply. Schools of choice can definitely shut the door and say, nope, you're not coming back. You chose home education, maybe next year. And maybe next year they can say, nope, you lost your place, you're not coming back. So check with your school of choice. That includes language schools, French immersion, charter schools. Those types of schools are schools of choice. Non-resident homeschooling board. They often are very experienced in home education. They truly believe parents are the primary educators of their children. A lot of their facilitators have home educated and are familiar with typical issues like boys that don't want to write, kids that don't want to socialize, those kinds of things, and will have lots of experience to help support you through those things. They're very knowledgeable about practices and regulation. I can't tell you the number of school boards Alberta Homeschooling talked to this past year, public school divisions that didn't know about unschooling, didn't know about children can get a diploma on home education. It was quite interesting. There's not a lot of information in the school world about home education. And they all must be supportive because that's in the regulations. Well, who do you pick? Big question. Okay, you have to pick for home education by September 30th. You have to enroll your child in distance education by September 1st because they start right away. Home education, we don't start till October, maybe November. The weather's still nice, but schools have to start September 1st because they have those 1,400 outcomes to cover. You don't. Now, decide. Pick on who offers the program you want. Do you want a more synchronous online program in distance education or more asynchronous? Do you want to take responsibility? Maybe you don't. Then you pick distance ed or home ed. What are their funding rules over and above the government? A lot of boards have a yes list and no list. A good question to ask is, would you fund a Nintendo Switch? Because if it's on your education plan, they should. What activities do they offer, especially this year? Do their staff have professional development in home education? Have they done it themselves? Do they understand it? And be sure to talk to people, not just people who rave about their school board, but people who grumble too, because how school authorities resolve complaints is very important. And there's quite a continuum out there. For high school, maybe pick a course and compare that course, say English 10, compare the course requirements for distance education or home education. See, that may give you a clue who to pick. Here's some generalizations. Big boards, so big school, public, Catholic divisions, often are less picky with receipts for reimbursement because they have the economies of scale to absorb clawbacks from the government. They often offer a lot of activities due to their economies of scale, but the downside is they adhere to a rigid system. Again, home education is about personalization and fitting the system to your child, not your child to the system. They also have a lot of rules that are not in the regulations. For example, they make parents fill out report cards so they can report back to the parent on how their child's doing at home in home education, which to me is ludicrous. It's too much work. The smaller independent schools, they get home education, especially if they've been doing it for a while. They help you with a lot of flexibility. They respect your wish to be left alone and just take the funding. And they are advocates to the government on your behalf. Most of them support unschooling and can offer suggestions. So now this is kind of a section that tells you who offers high school diploma on home education program. The ones that are outlined in yellow will offer section 6. So if you have a high schooler who wants to earn a diploma on home ed, you're probably better off with these school authorities. So step 3 is, well, know your child, know what your child likes, what your goals are, what your philosophy of education is. Is it just acquire knowledge till you can pass the test and get good marks, or is it you want your child to have intrinsic learning? What is your child's age? That's a big one. Their temperament, are they more easygoing or spicy? The type of learner they are they more auditory, visual? If they're a kinesthetic learner, online and paper-based is not going to work for them, right? So the program choices are distance education is pretty well everything not home education. Home education is the term for parent-led, you're in control, okay? Distance education also is called online, virtual, at-home learning. That was big with the government last year. Classroom, the school portion of shared responsibility, print-based, teacher-directed, blended, you name it. Lots of terms. Aligned, there's another one. Those are school. You have zero control on that. That is just your position is to make sure the work gets done, just like homework. It's also coded the same way. So each type of program is coded differently. So only the yellow here is coded for home education funding going to the parent. The white are all school controlled, and you get no funding on the school controlled programs. So how does funding dictate your choice? Well, distance education, the school gets about $11,000 per child per year, plus extra grant funding for infrastructure, busing, and special programs. This covers the teacher's salaries and supplies. The teachers must deliver 1,000 hours in grades 1 to 9 and must teach 950 hours in grades 10 to 12. That's in the Education Act. Home education, the school gets $1,700 and has to share half of that with you. It's offsetting the cost of supplies that you use that money for, and teacher support. They do not teach. So when a school authority says to you, looks like you're covering a lot of those Alberta Program of Studies outcomes on home education, why don't you just switch it over to print-based or online, and you can get extra resources. Maybe we'll throw in a computer. Well, that's why, is because look how much more lucrative the school gets funding for versus home education. Now, this is not the best interest of your child. You have to consider what's best for your child, not what's best for the school. Okay, and there's a lot of myths out there with school board information sessions. I'm going to talk about this a little bit on the end, but keep considering your child. Again, you want to fit the system to your child, not the other way around, right? I've talked about this about. Some considerations. Your child from 0 to 6 is very limited in attention span and learning through two-dimensional screens. They're getting better from age 6 to 12, but still not totally self-directed. Children are much better. They have a better developed executive function from 13 to 25, which is why online learning is better suited to those teens from 13 and up. This kind of shows you the development of the brain. So preschoolers they're pretty well developed back brain area right here, right up to the parietal lobe. Those 3 to 5 year olds are developed there. But from grades 1 to 6, this whole frontal lobe is developing, which is okay. But ages 13 to 25 is those teenagers. That's the prefrontal cortex. That's the development of self-control. And that is when kids get better, more self-directed, take on more ownership of their education in both home education and school, classroom, online. Okay. Even Alberta Education, before COVID, said few programs serve students younger than 10 years of age. That's a consideration for online learning. That's grade 5. So maybe consider online or print-based for grades 7 and up, so teenagers, but not before then, or you're going to be fighting your child to do the work. So let's look, teacher-directed print-based. Now, because the kids aren't as accountable with a teacher, it's not like online where they're daily with a teacher over Zoom or weekly. The teacher checks in through email generally or phone calls. You need a very self-directed child to do teacher-directed print-based because the paper resources are designed to teach entirely. They are delivering the 950 to 1,000 hours a year. Now, young children who can't read need a reader, right? But they still have to meet those Alberta programs of study outcomes, assignments, deadlines, and it's better to put a younger child online if you have to before age 13, but keep in mind that children are not motivated to do this. It's not a discipline issue, it's a development issue. Better to go home education with parent in charge of what gets done because you control it, you have changes. Online, again, parents need to closely supervise until about age 15 to 17, until kids have that self-control and executive function to plan and execute what they need to do. Keep in mind, children need help with drop boxes, saving files, discussion requirements, online tasks, uploading. If you're not that savvy with computers, somebody's going to have to help your child. And young children are not motivated to stay on task. Home education, best for all kids age 0 to 12 because young children learn in a three-dimensional world. Best with hands-on activities. So don't even give them that much curriculum or paper-based stuff. You have the most flexibility. You can take a year off if you want. There's a lot of world schoolers that do that. And every child learns without direct instruction. Best learning is through play and loved activities like board games, field trips, park days. If you don't want to, you don't have to teach. You can outsource to those 1-hour classes. And yeah, so consider that too. And okay. All right. So, and there's a lot of philosophies. Some parents do a classical philosophy of home education. Some teach all the Alberta programs of study. A lot of parents do that. I did that the first year until my kids stopped listening 3 months later. And then we kind of slid into unschooling. Some parents just teach math and English and let the rest be interest-led. And in school, and especially during COVID, math and English was the most important that schools were concerned about. Social studies, science, art, phys ed, health, all those things are very much location specific and children pick up anywhere. But math and English are things that need to be kept up and can be learned very much through a three-dimensional experiential way. Some parents do unit studies or project-based thematics. Some do a Waldorf or Montessori approach. Some unschool, which is totally child interest-led. Some roam school, so they pick year by year, subject by subject, whatever works. Absolutely, they throw it out if it doesn't work. And unschooling is letting children play, empowering them to play, learn through projects, learn through exploring. And many unschoolers play until about age 17, and then they take the grade 12 courses, write the diploma exams, go on to post-secondary. So it's not like children who are unschooling are not learning. They're still learning, but instead of at age 6 sending them to school, they keep on learning through play, projects, and exploration. And they actually learn about the same things that school-age children do. Okay, so pick one of 3 programs. So if you're going to do home education, you get to choose the resources. You get to choose what outcomes you're going to follow. You get to choose your method and your assessment. And that could be just, oh, my child started reading this year. That's an assessment. You don't have to give tests. You don't have to give marks. You could just choose observation as your assessment. Okay, school controlled. The school chooses resources to follow the Alberta programs of study. They choose the methods. They choose the assessment. They give exams and marks. There is no funding, and they follow the Education Act. Now, shared responsibility is where the parent takes some subjects, say the parent wants to do science and social and art, and the school takes the other subjects, math, English, whatever's left. But it can be an 80-20 split too. It doesn't have to be 50-50. And the school part is run just like distance ed. The parent part is run just like home ed. Okay, so you get a portion of home education on your parent part, but nothing on the school part. The school teaches the school part. And you can get a diploma on all 3 programs. Now, this is what a home education plan looks like. These are the 22 outcomes. So these are the outcomes and goals you're going to meet. Then you list the resources and activities that meet those goals and how you're going to assess. So in all of these, you could put observation, observation, observation. For resources, anything you want to buy with reimbursements, you put in this column. And you can list your activities. And you can see these squares are tiny. This is a 2-page report. It does not have to be more detailed than that. Absolutely doesn't. This is it in, text format. So you can see here, this is the language arts outcomes. Read for information, understanding, and enjoyment. Write and speak clearly, accurately, and appropriately for the context. Your child and their home education has to know this by the age 20. Very, very flexible. In fact, your child could play Fortnite for a week and cover a lot of these off. Absolutely, or Minecraft. Okay, so yeah, okay. Okay, so next you plan curriculum, and I think you do. Okay, I already talked about this. Yep. How much time does home education take? Not much. When I use the analogy of a dinner party, so when you're throwing a dinner party for 20 people, those of you who have, I have, it's a lot of work. For 20 people, you're going to plan what you're going to buy, what you're going to serve. You're going to hunt recipes. Then you go to the store and shop, bring it all home, prepare the food, cook the food, set the table. Then you have the dinner party, and then all the guests leave, and then you have the cleanup, right? So you're getting fed, but compare that to you and your partner just eating a sandwich at the table, right? Sandwich at the table is home education, dinner party is school. Look how much time it takes when you're doing something for a crowd compared to when you're doing it for 1 or even 5 kids in your family. It's still a smaller scale. So people think, oh, I look at my child, he dawdles over homework for 3 hours a day. There's no way I'm going to spend 6 hours a day homeschooling him. It's not going to take 6 hours a day. Even high school doesn't take 6 hours a day. So elementary will take anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, not including reading and field trips. But really, it doesn't take much. And a lot of homeschoolers do it from October to May or even April. Take a month off for December holidays. Junior high, about a 1 hour a day. And my 5 high schoolers got through 4 cores and options in 2 to 3 hours a day and no homework. So children have a lot of time to explore, to have fun, to build relationships. Here are some places to get more hands-on materials. These are volume and nets, math nets for grade 8. They are very handy for giving kids the 3-dimensional stuff. So a lot of kinesthetic learners need this kind of materials and supplies to understand concepts. These are places to get them. Big question when you're homeschooling from family and friends is, oh, what about socialization? As if your child can only meet friends in a peer-sorted institution. No. Home education is socialization in the community, and your children are going to meet all ages, genders, abilities, cultures, religions, you name it. They meet it through lots of through neighborhood kid friends, through church, through brownies, through sports clubs, through homeschool board meetups, you name it, they will socialize. And it's more of a real life socialization because it matches the real world. So under supervised home education, you'll have a facilitator. They will be a certified teacher, but they won't teach. They support you. That's their role. Hopefully, they may have been a homeschooling parent, but they're your partner in education. They are not your supervisor. They're your partner, your support role. They're really wanting you to succeed. So you have 2 visits a year. Your facilitator will come out sometime in the fall. If they don't come by the end of September or the end of October, don't worry, they'll come in November. It happens. One year I had one in December. They have a lot of families to visit and a lot of kids to socialize with. So you'll see them when you see them. But if you need help and support, definitely contact them before they come out to see you. Absolutely. But they'll go over your home education plan, see if you're happy with your curriculum you picked, make changes, fine-tune things. In the spring, they come out and they have a lovely little visit with your child, and they listen to your child excitedly tell them everything they've done, which is really cute for them. So you can show them your photographs on your phone of what you've done. Maybe they did some Home Depot building workshops, so show them the certificates, maybe a writing sample, such as a letter to Santa, projects they've done. And really, it's a fun social visit. There's no marks given. You can give the assessment if you want, but you don't have to. On distance education, it's school. So your children will have exams. You still can choose if they write the provincial achievement tests. The school will give the mark, report cards, and there will be parent-teacher interviews. So there's no testing on home education, ever, ever, ever. Now, what are some red flags? Red flags are when a school authority tells you that on teacher-directed or print-based, you have to do the teaching, or you have to assist the teacher in giving information to the child. The Education Act states that only certificated teachers can teach school programs such as print-based or teacher-directed. It's against the Education Act for parents to teach on those programs. So either the materials totally teach your child, or they have regular contact with the teacher. Another red flag, telling parents what curriculum they can and can't use. Their job is to support you in whatever you do. If you want to choose unschooling and not use any paper-based curriculum, they are there to support you. Telling parents that homeschooling is hard. Not so. A child learns always. Their learning is intrinsic. They learn from the moment they're born. Those little brain cells are firing. These are brain cells. They're constantly connecting, whether they're playing a video game or they're doing a math workbook. They're learning and building connections. They never stop learning ever. Telling parents what methodology they should or shouldn't use. And really, they're there for support. Telling parents how to parent. I once had a school authority tell me that I should get my child to do more of their marking, or I should get the child to do more admin. Those are personal choices. You know your child best. You know when your child's ready for more independence. It's usually in the teen years. We know that from brain development. A lot of school authorities and teachers do not get instruction in brain development. But guaranteed, your child will become more capable, more self-directed, more independent as they age in the teen years. And another red flags is telling parents how to handle their home education routines, unless the parents ask for it, right? So it's advice. We had so many school authorities last year tell the parents that their child would not get a government diploma, transcript, or even scholarships on home education. And that's not true. They do. They will get all those things. Okay, so home education is like stepping off a cliff. Really, it's only for a year. It's not for life. If you find that you start this year, you don't like it, things aren't working, you can easily put your children back into school next year, and they will be not worse the wear at all. There's lots of peer support on the Facebook groups, in your homeschooling board groups. And you really can't stop kids from learning. You can't force them to learn. You can't stop them from learning. We all homeschool until age 6. There's a lot of benefits from home education. I think I had one child with a learning disability, and I think my children, the way their different temperaments and personalities were, would not have flourished in a classroom. I seen their confidence and their self-esteem soar. They got way more sleep. Those teenagers sleep until noon, 2 o'clock. They get much more sleep, and I think that really helped grow their brain cells. It's more relaxed time for families, more time for interests. Close siblings, yeah, they fight a lot more, but they also play together a lot more. They don't get that thing at school where, oh, you can't talk to your sibling, he's a grade lower than you. They don't get that. Great work habits, especially in the teen years. They look up things. They're more independent learners, which is really good practice for university. They love learning. They develop a love of learning, not for pizza coupons, but because they want to know things. They develop really good social skills in talking to adults, in talking to everybody. And it's a one-on-one personalized education. You can't go wrong. But the biggest benefit, I think, is close families and siblings. I've seen that in my crew. They are amazingly close, even when they're across the country, across the city, across the province. It's great. Okay, I'm going to, okay, so we're going to end there, and I'm going to open it up for questions. And I just want to thank you for joining us tonight, sharing your evening. And I know it was a lot of information, but this recording will be on the front page of our website, so you can watch it over and over again and catch a lot of the details. And if not, feel free to purchase the Happy Homeschooling Handbook, which is constantly updated. It's updated every time we go through a print run, which is a small print run. So you will have the most up-to-date information there too. So thank you for joining us.